the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush.
Here we go around the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush.
A grisly Friday morning in Ohio.
California, New Hampshire, Tampa. Serial killer.
Lurking in plain sight. The killers with children at home. What becomes of the daughters and sons of brutal murderers? Are they forever followed by the monster in the shadows, haunted by their parents' sins? What happens when they find out that daddy or mommy is a killer?
I'll do a little close-up. I got a good close-up of you, Rich.
Oh, good.
If daddy could kill people, then anybody's capable of murder.
I'm Nancy Grace. This is Children of Serial Killers. Childhood, a time of innocence, running free in open fields, soccer practice, sleepovers, ice cream cones from a truck that goes by every Friday night. As parents, we turn on night lights and tell our children that monsters aren't real. We read stories, we sing lullabies, and we watch our children grow free from the darkness in the world. But for some children, monsters are real, and they're closer to home than anyone could ever imagine. The so-called boogeyman is right down the hall.
Is it environment or genes that cause somebody to be a murderer? Use the analogy of yourself as a gun. The gun is loaded with bullets. The bullets are the genes, and the trigger is the environment. These bullets can be very dangerous, high caliber, exploding heads. These are the real monster genes, right? You can inherit those. It's a casino game. It's just a matter of luck which ones you get from your parents.
Imagine you didn't even know you were part of that casino game. Your father seems like an all-American dad, loving, kind, your knight in shining armor. You go fishing, you play at the park, you build an everlasting bond. And then one day, you find out Daddy has a dark side. It simmers quietly, slowly bubbling up before it rears its ugly head. The dark side was lying dormant. You now fear what will become of you. In this series, we bring you the real stories of children of serial killers.
My father was a monster.
He's killed women, he's killed children.
He went from being this knight in shining armor of my dreams to nothing I expected him to be.
How did the hands that changed my diapers beat a young woman to death? This isn't Jack the Ripper. This is recent history. This sounds crazy. This sounds like out of a movie. I became the daughter of a serial killer when I was 9.
Jen Carson, an average California girl, she and her father, a former school teacher, thick as thieves.
When I was born, my father decided to be a stay-at-home dad. He would take me to a petting zoo or read to me, and always did my hair every morning, very attentive and very loving.
That didn't last long.
He really kind of starts to unravel then when I'm a preschooler. Some of My early memories are of him being violent with my mother. My mom then, chooses to leave.
For Jen, a sweet little girl whose parents' divorce shatters her life, things are about to get much worse.
These sweet memories I have of, Daddy taking me to the petting zoo and brushing my hair go from kind of idyllic to an absolute nightmare.
Jen's parents share custody, and the horrors begin when she meets her brand new stepmom, wealthy divorcee Susan Carson, who she says is more like a wicked witch than a loving mother.
When I met her, the first thing I thought of was the witch from Snow White. She just looked very old to me. She looked very haggard. She just looked like a Disney villain to me.
Jen describes the relationship between her dad and the new stepmother as explosive. As a matter of fact, like gas and a match. The two get deep into drugs, and they start to believe people around them are witches. Life is no longer fairy tales and petting zoos. It's an evil stepmother and a childhood straight from hell.
The visits were so bizarre. We get up to this nice looking townhouse and we open the door to go in, and there's this 100 potted trees with no light and no furniture. And so the only way I could process that was that I was going into like a haunted forest.
In fact, the only furniture in the entire house, a giant waterbed.
They're doing drugs and they're passed out naked on this waterbed. I was alone with like no food, no bed, no blanket.
Jen climbs onto kitchen countertops, desperate for food. At one point, she even picks up the phone, calls the operator, and asks for Mommy. If that's not enough, Jen says her villain stepmother turns her evil ire toward her.
I have a memory of Susan trying to drown me in a bathtub. And I'm crying, I want my mommy, I want food. Susan's like, you want me to rub your back? I'll rub your back. And she, with jagged, dirty fingernails, scratched my back. And it was this shearing, burning pain. When I get home, my mom sees the wounds. She said there were 5 wounds down, open, jagged wounds on my back.
The mental anguish of dropping her little girl off with Daddy, only to pick her up with blood on her back, makes Jen's mom snap. Desperate, she disappears with her little girl.
She packs up just a few items in the car, and we go on the run. She would say, Daddy is very sick. And his new wife is a very mean lady, and we need to go away until he gets better.
As Jen relives the trauma, what she doesn't know is that her dad and stepmother are getting deeper and deeper into drugs, triggering an even darker side. The demonic duo go on an LSD-induced trip in a motel room and decide it's their mission to kill anyone they believe is a witch. They even write a manifesto and set their sights on murdering celebrities like Johnny Carson and politicians like Ronald Reagan.
Since about 1989, they've been involved in the study of murderers, including serial killers.
Neuroscientist James Fallon studies these real-life monsters. He understands what makes them tick. He does not have a personal connection to any of these cases.
They seem to be under each other's spell, and they get together. They can form this witch's brew. There's a magic cocktail here. She's telling all these fantastic visions. He's eating it up. There are witches and evil people out there. It gives them both this great thrill.
The couple sell their home, travel to Europe, and go on a suspected international killing spree before eventually coming home to the U.S. American authorities begin to suspect the couple after their roommate and a coworker turn up dead. The murders are brutal. One victim has her skull crushed with a frying pan before she's stabbed 13 times with a paring knife. The other victim shot in the head and burned, his body covered in manure and then buried. Jen's father takes time away from his rampage to write letters to his daughter, sending them to relatives as she is still in hiding.
I have letters he wrote like the week he murdered someone. And that's so disturbing to me. And the letters just continued and continued.
5 years go by. Jen, now in her 4th grade class, when her mom shows up at school, something mom never does in the middle of the day.
She said, I'm going to walk you home. And halfway home, we sat down. And she said, I need to tell you something. You remember how I told you that Daddy was very sick and his new wife is a very bad person? She said he didn't get better. He got much, much worse. He hurt a bunch of people. It was like the bursting of a bubble.
The murderous couple, captured and soon dubbed by the media as the witch killers. At just 9 years old, a little schoolgirl, Jen learns at a much too early age what a dark and evil place this world can be.
I was sleeping with knives and scissors because if Daddy could kill people, then anybody's capable of murder.
Jen finds newspapers hidden in her mother's drawer, and the details she discovers are even more gruesome than a Hollywood horror movie.
I remember reading about the murders in detail. I remember a B word I didn't know how to read, and I now know it was bludgeoned. I remember the word decapitated, set a body on fire. This was a stay-at-home dad. This was an elementary school teacher. How did we get here?
Oh, he's staying at home, he's doing the dishes and everything. Meanwhile, he's boiling. He's filled with all these ideas and his own urges. They seem to look at people, other human beings, as just meat.
The serial killer couple confess to killing Karen Barnes, Clark Stevens, and John Charles Hellier. They say they were trying to save America and describe their murders as part of a holy war. At trial, they show absolutely no remorse and even start laughing and making out in court. They're suspected of killing 9 more victims. 9 more victims whose families may never get justice. The killer couple recant their confessions, but the evidence speaks for itself. They're both sentenced to 75 years to life in prison.
The idea of monster genes or killer genes, it can give somebody a very odd feeling. Like, I look in the mirror and I see my father, I don't want to see that guy. He's a killer, it's not me.
We have the same face. We look like he went copy and paste or Xeroxed his face. I worried that I had this monster DNA or monster genes innately in me, and that maybe I would become violent or bad or evil. I worried that I had some sort of ticking time clock, being worried that I would turn into him.
She doesn't. In fact, Jen dedicates her life to working with trauma patients. But even so, she still can't seem to shake her own deep fears of what her father and stepmother are capable of. Nearly 30 years after his conviction, Jen attends her father's parole hearing alongside families of his victims to make absolutely sure he never leaves prison. Guess what? It works.
I believe he does not have a conscience. To this day, he says he does not regret any of the murders, and he speaks of them very proudly. So there is no human empathy. There's no human empathy there. I have no idea how someone from a lovely family could become so violent. This kind of monstrous figure who now sends me threatened letters that he wants to kill me. If he got out, I think he would kill me. I know he'd kill my mother.
Jen leans on the power of prayer to get her through the pain of her past.
I'm a person of faith, and so I truly believe that God had a purpose for me. Am I okay? No, I still struggle, you know, but I'm here. This is my journey. This is where I've been.
On our next episode,
My dad's crimes, pretty horrific.
Strangled her. You strangled her with? I think my hands.
a serial killer terrorizes Tampa.
Raping and brutally murdering 8 women.
His son, horrified.
It tears me up to think that my dad's face was the last face that somebody saw.